follow on me. We're marching out into the night. Follow on me. We're standing up against a giant. Follow on me. We might be walking in the fire, but if it's where we're meant to be, then on me.
Okay, so I show it is 1513. So everybody, welcome to On Me 20 podcast number 4. We are really excited, and this is something brand new for us, but it has just proved to be so amazing. We've gotten so many great comments back from all of you, and I know so many of you have been inspired, encouraged, and challenged, and so we're grateful that you're back with us today. And we do want to welcome Joel Neeb, who has joined us today, and I'll give you a proper introduction in just a minute, Joel, but thanks so much for being here. You know,
Debbie, thanks for having me.
You bet, you bet. I had no choice the news that was given to me on August 2nd, 2006, when I was notified that my son, Mark Allen Lee, had been killed in action. But I did have a choice how I responded. I could have curled up in a ball and felt sorry for myself, but that wouldn't have brought Mark back. It would have physically made me sick, and nobody would want to be around me, and that's not how God wired me. So my choice that day was to put on his boots, pick up his weapon, and stay in the fight for every man and woman who's served, stay in the fight for other families who've lost a loved one. And I do know who pays that price for my freedom. And so, Joel, thank you for your service. For every one of you that are listening, joining us, whether it's on Facebook Live or here on our Zoom call, thank you for your service. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. We've dedicated our lives at America's Mighty Warriors to make sure that you're taken care of in Mark's memory. And we're excited to be here. We're excited to be joined by so many amazing patriots. And the reason that we're here today is because of the COVID-19. You know, our world has just been turned upside down by the changes. Many of us have lost jobs. Many have jobs on furlough, don't know if they'll have a job to go back to. Some of us are fortunate to still be working, but we're working from home. We're trying to adapt there. We've noticed that in the last 3 days, every one of our other speakers had an interruption from a child coming in or someone playing basketball outside where they were trying to tape. And so that's our new reality of where we're at and where we live. Many people have had their businesses closed down. They've lost what they did to support their families. And unfortunately, many others have lost a loved one in the midst of this. And so we just wanted to gather together and let you know that you're not alone. Let you folks know that we're here for you. We sympathize. We understand. Many of us have gone through similar things that you're facing. But we wanted to bring you in today, Joel, to help us with your encouraging words, with your wisdom, with your leadership, share some of those things that you have learned helped in the midst of change and transitioning and adapting and overcoming and wherever we're at. And Joel, welcome. I'd like to read your official bio. Joel Neeb, call sign Thor, is a former F-15 fighter pilot, a published author, an American Ninja Warrior competitor, the CEO of Afterburner, and a stage 4 cancer survivor. Thor was a member of an elite team as a fighter pilot in the Air Force, one of the most elite teams in the world, and now serves as the leader of an elite team as the CEO of Afterburner. Afterburner is a team of former elite military that has been helping companies to lead through chaos for 24 years. So just looking at that, Joel, we know you're going to be an amazing asset to help us as we try to dive into COVID-19 and what we do and how we cope. So thank you so much, Joel, for being here.
Debbie, thanks for having me. And I'll tell you that, we just got connected through this podcast over the last couple of days. But as I was telling people that I was going to be on this and telling them who it was with, it was amazing, the outpouring of positive support and people saying, oh, you're going to do this with Debbie. She's doing such amazing things for the veteran community. And there's such a heartfelt appreciation for what you do already. I feel very honored to be here.
Well, thank you. So tell us a little bit more about you, Joel. Tell us about your family. Are you married? Do you have kids? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, so grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Moved around the country as my dad's job took me to different places. So Texas and Washington State. Finally went on to the Air Force Academy in Colorado. Graduated in 1999 and went right off to pilot training following that. In pilot training, completed that, met my now wife, and we've been married for 16 years. We have 3 kiddos, and today we live on the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia, in a town called Alpharetta. and having a great time hunkering down at home like everybody else.
Nice. Yeah, I think, we look at all the different circumstances and people, and, myself, I live by myself, so hunkering down alone was not a lot of fun the first couple of weeks. And so I had to adapt and overcome and figure out some new things. I think I may have got my schedule a little too full again, but great stuff happening. And so, and I know there's other people you talk to, they're like, oh my gosh, I'd love to be alone by myself right now. My kids are driving me nuts. This is happening. And so we all, in wherever we're at, have to learn to adapt and overcome in those things. But again, thank you for your service. I think we share some similarities there with my background in aerospace science, and actually tried to join the Air Force. Luckily, they wouldn't accept me. I was a single mom with 3 kids. I don't know what on earth I was thinking at that time, but we're excited to have you here and looking forward to your wisdom you're going to share and some of your life experiences. As you think back and look back through your life, what are some of those maybe some of the most difficult things you've gone through? Can you share the story of that, and then what you did in the midst of that afterwards to overcome?
Yeah, 2 things really stand out for me in terms of the periods of struggle and adversity for me. The Air Force Academy was really tough, but then just on the other side of that, graduating and going into pilot training, that was the first time when I was really faced with tangible fears and challenges that I didn't think I could surmount. At the Air Force Academy, it was just a matter of getting up and doing it and persevering every day. And you endure a military academy. It's different from college, and it's a crucible from which you learn leadership skills, but it's something that's you're in training for 4 years effectively. But all of a sudden I was in pilot training and, going up and flying an airplane hundreds of miles an hour by myself. I think few people know that the 7th mission that you fly in pilot training is a solo mission. And so you get very little time under your belt before they kick you out of the door, effectively kick you out of the nest and say, go do this on your own. And one of the things that taught me about adversity was that when you're with an incredible team and you've got something bigger than you that you're pursuing, it's amazing how you can be transformed. And when you have this all-in-this together mindset, I couldn't have pushed myself out the door to go complete something like pilot training. It wasn't enough to have internal motivation. It's what I call a pull mechanism. It was this vision of success that had implanted in our brains of this fighter pilot and this service that I wanted to go pursue, and this incredible elite team that I was surrounded by. I didn't want to let people down. And so in terms of adversity and how I see the parallels with what we're going through right now, we're all in this challenge together. This is the time for us to band together and figure out what we want to be on the other side and allow that to pull us through this crisis as well.
Yeah, I think that's so good. And especially for those people that are in circumstances maybe like I am, where you are quarantined by yourself. Be very careful not to get isolated. Even if
Right.
there aren't people calling you and checking in on you like you feel like they should, reach out to people. Don't get yourself in that downward spiral where you're all alone and feel like nobody cares. So pick up the phone, call somebody. I think it's so important in anything we do, and I know I mentioned this a couple days in a row, but when we serve others, when we're doing things for others, then we're not focused inward on what we're dealing with. And not that you just ignore when you're going through difficulties, or not that we look at the quarantine, the pandemic that we're going through and saying, oh, it's really not that bad, things are fine. We still have to be rational and accept what's going on. But as you go through those things, when you reach out to other people, that helps so much. And so I love what you said about team. Could you maybe expand on that a little bit in other situations, or how that would relate to coronavirus? Maybe some hands-on suggestions to people in the midst of that?
Yeah, absolutely, Debbie. And it speaks to your point about saying that we can't do this by ourselves. So the other time period, the period of adversity for me that was most transformative and obviously the scariest point in my life was when I got diagnosed with the stage 4 cancer battle. And effectively, I was on death's door for about 2 years. And by that, I mean, I wasn't like in a hospital bed dying, but they told me, like, at any point you're going to go to the doctor and they're going to say it's about 3 or 4 months left. Just prepare for the end. That was just the nature of the cancer I had. Stage 4 obviously is very far advanced. And so that's the world that I lived in during that time. And this was about 10 years into my Air Force flying experience at this point, a little bit less. And so I was no stranger to overcoming fear. And by that point, I really felt like I could do things by myself. And I didn't need other people. And I didn't need external motivation. And that was really for people that were weak in my mind. And one thing that having cancer taught me was that I absolutely needed help. And it wasn't wrong to ask for help. It was actually what I needed to do in that circumstance. And so all of a sudden I found myself not being able to tackle this challenge on my own and even just get ahead of it mentally. And it required me to step out of my comfort zone and go ask other people to help me out. I've never forgotten that, how powerful that was, and what a wrong mentality I had going into that was a sign of strength to not ask for help. That's baloney. We should be asking for help. There's things that we only can do together, and we should be looking for those opportunities.
I think that's so good, and you touched on something so important there. One of our programs, we do a lot with our veterans that are struggling with post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury, and we offer hyperbaric oxygen therapy, hormone and vitamin therapy. And obviously the SEAL community is my family, so we're very connected there. And I tell a lot of the guys, we can help. There's things we can do. We can heal your brain, not just mask the same symptoms. We can actually get your brains healed. And they're like, oh, Mama Lee, I'm good. Somebody else needs it more than me. And I'm like, that thing, I got this. I don't need any help, like you just said. And that is not a sign of weakness. That is a sign of a leader to take that first step and say, yes, I have a problem. If you lost a limb in combat, you would address it and say, yeah, I've got a problem there. We need to take care of it. We need to, tie it off, make sure that, the blood doesn't flow out of there, and you would immediately take care of that. And we're not seeing that happen as often with our veterans struggling with post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury. And there are physical things that are actually there, not just emotional things that you're dealing with. So I love, that you pointed that out, that, and I think oftentimes our circumstances bring us to that place where, God allows us to go through those things when we think, yeah, I got this, I can do it. And he's like, yeah, no, let me show you, you can't. And so, he humbles us to be able then to say, I need help. And I think that ties back so well to our on me. That probably was Mark's final words to his teammates. He stood out in the direct line of fire 3 times that day, willingly gave his life to save his teammates. And the last time, as they cleared the bottom of the house and he started up the stairs, he said, on me. And he said, I'm going to take the lead on this. You guys follow me. But he didn't say, I got this by myself. It was a team. He knew he needed help to be able to do that. And that's, very common in the military. You do things as a team. And I think for me, a couple of years ago when the Army came out, Army of One, I was kind of like, oh, okay, that's kind of a weird logo. I get what they're saying, that you need to be one, all unit together. But so I think that's so important. Tell us a little bit more about the perseverance that you touched on. I know there's other circumstances in your life where you had to persevere.
Sure. So I think just for perseverance in general, what I've learned and what a lot of the research is showing is that perseverance, or as it's called sometimes, grit, is really a defining characteristic for success. A lot of the things that we think traditionally or conventionally would be the characteristics for success. Somebody who is, excessively smart, or has a great network, or starts with a lot of money, or is more athletic, or better looking. All these things that are traditional ways that we look at good positive characteristics that lead to success turn out not to be so correlated with the things that we consider successful lives. The one thing that research keeps pointing back to, and certainly in my experience that keeps pointing back to as well as I get to know more and more leaders as I go through life, is this common trait of perseverance, this common trait of grit, and this ability to say, to your point earlier, I'm not looking at this with rose-tinted glasses. I'm not just looking at this as a glass half full or being optimistic. It's with stark reality, acknowledging your situation, but then also having this growth mentality that there are ways that I'm going to figure out how to cope with this, how to turn this into a growth opportunity for myself instead of just going through it. And I think that's truly the defining characteristic that I've seen in people that are the most successful, that we consider the most successful in life.
Yeah, I think that's a huge characteristic, to have that perseverance in whatever we're facing. And I know that is one of the things that, is developed in our men and women who serve in the military through their training that they go through to be able to do that. And so I think that's a very, very important characteristic for us to have in the midst of anything that we're going through. But I know there's, some other things. You're an author. You've written a book, Survivor's Obligation. I love the title of that. Tell us more, what brought you to that, what your story is in there.
Yeah, absolutely, Mama Lee. So it was a book that I co-authored. I wrote it with a gentleman named Chris Strickland. He was a wing commander in the Air Force. He was a Thunderbird pilot, and he ejected. Have you ever seen the mountain home footage of the the guy who ejected during an air show, that was him. And so he had a near-death experience. I had a near-death experience. The title comes from my experience in the chemo room. And so I had massive surgery following stage 4 cancer diagnosis. They put me on chemo. Of course, my hair turned silver and fell out, and I was frail, small, much smaller than I am right now. And as we're going through this, it's amazing the people you meet in the chemo room, because they're also optimistic, and they'll share their stories with you about what they're going to do when they get better, because everybody's looking at this as their second chance and what they're going to do once we get better. And I shared my stories too, and it was all the aspirational things that I wanted to do in life, and that I never either took a step towards or just didn't get a chance to do yet. And then the next week we'd come back, and maybe one of the people wasn't there, and they didn't necessarily die, but the chemo wasn't working, and they're on the wrong path now, and it probably wasn't too long before they would pass away. And I watched this happen again and again, and I was one of the fortunate few that survived that circumstance and those conversations. A lot of times, and military members listening will relate to this, you walk out of a situation like that with what's called survivor's remorse, right? And that's where you say, I didn't do anything different. It's not like I deserve to live through this experience. Why did I survive this and they didn't? And you can even have a sense of depression over this. It can hobble you, the survivor's guilt, the survivor's remorse. And I didn't have that. I was so ecstatic to get a second chance. I didn't have that, but I did have something that I call survivor's obligation. And that obligation is to live out everything that we all talked about in that room. Every time I want to quit, every time that I want to tailor back some of the things that I'm pursuing in life, I think about those other people in that room who told me with just as much enthusiasm what they were going to go after, and they didn't get that chance. And here I am living what they would have given anything to be able to do. And I have an obligation today to continue in their stead.
Wow, I think that's so good and so important. I know I'm a contributing author in several books, and I autograph them. Live your life worthy of their sacrifice, and whether in your case, some of those that you watched, I don't know if you were in a military hospital or not. They may not have been in the military, but for those, obviously, as a mother, of a fallen SEAL, my oldest son served in the Marines, my son-in-law served in the Army, so, a military family. My brother was in the Air Force, so I can do the hoo-yah, hoorah, hoo-ah. And Air Force, okay, what's your call sign? You don't have one of those. Why not? I mean, you have a call sign, but you don't have a chant, the rah-rah. So I had to make it up.
Oh, yeah.
It's jacuzzi.
Yeah, we're too young. They haven't figured it out yet. But I was going to say, that's why I was inspired so much by what you're doing, because I think you're living an amazing survivor's obligation. And I know, for all of us, there's a period after loss and tragedy where you don't know what you're going to do next. And if you were like me, you kind of, curled up in a ball and didn't know how to face the next day. And you turned post-traumatic stress, which we have to have. I mean, scars exist. We don't get a choice in that one. It's not strong to pretend you don't have it. You turned this circumstance into a post-traumatic growth opportunity for all of us to participate in, and that's super inspiring.
Yeah. So how would you tell people in the midst of that? I think there's a lot of that going on with the coronavirus, right? Because they've lost businesses, they've lost jobs. What would you tell them? How do they start? What are the steps?
Yeah, what I would say is this. First of all, you have to acknowledge that struggle transforms us, right? Adversity transforms us. We don't have a choice in that, just like we don't have a choice whether or not we have post-traumatic stress on the other side of it, a challenging situation. Scars are just going to be there. We do get to choose how we respond. So if struggle transforms us and we're already being transformed, then right now we're making decisions. And indecision is a decision as well. And we have to decide, what is going to be the story of this struggle we're going through. And the reason that's so important, and the reason why struggle is so critical to our lives, and why every story of hope and every story of every leader becoming who we know them as today starts with that moment of struggle, is because of the following, and this is probably the most important part. Struggle brings us clarity that we don't have during other parts of our lives. I know we're all seeing that right now. We're all seeing, as the noise of everyday life is stripped away, all the things that we thought were important in January, and we start to see things as, why was I even worried about that? Why was I, trying to satisfy my ego going after this? Or why did I care what that person thought? And for a moment, this won't last. Things will get back to, quote unquote normal. For a moment, we get a glimpse into clarity. And it's up to us to decide how we're going to apply this clarity on the other side of this challenge.
Right. And I think that's so important that it's a choice. It's not what you're feeling. And, you know, I've tried to encourage people in the midst of the coronavirus, get up every day, try to keep a normal routine. Even if you know, you've lost your job and you don't have any work to get up, try to keep some normal routine in your life. Get up. I tell them, first thing you do is before your feet even hit the ground, find one thing to be grateful for and then express it. You know, if you've got a spouse near you or children, express that. If not, you know, say it out loud. Let God know that, you know, you're grateful that you had hot water in the shower, or that you know, aren't being bombed like they are right now in places in, you know, other countries. But, and then to make sure you're eating healthy. Keep a diet. I know it's so tempting. I struggled with that the week before last and had to grab myself and get back and stay away from the junk food. You know, those things are not healthy for our brain and for us as we make decisions. Make sure you're working out, you know, at least 30 minutes a day. Some of us had more time to be able to do that. And then, you know, establish a daily quiet time. You know, as, you know, a believer for me, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for, you know, what God's done in my life and the strength he gives me. And that's such an important part of my day. I miss out so many things if I don't start my day with that, of nuggets of what I could have used to direct me through that day. What are the things would you say? You know, I know in the military, we love a good challenge. So we've asked each one of our guests to have at least one challenge. Do you have a challenge that you would like to offer to our listeners today?
Yeah, absolutely. I would challenge the listeners to look at this period as their transformative period in life. And it's okay to acknowledge that this is really hard and that this is painful, and it's not putting that away, and it's not putting your head in the sand and pretending that that doesn't exist, or that we don't have relatives who are in medically fragile state that we're worried about catching the virus, or we haven't lost our jobs, or watching our businesses fall apart, or any of the myriad of challenges that the world effectively is facing right now. But be able to see above the noise and challenge yourself. Here's the challenge: to look at how this could be, fast forward 3 years from now, how this could be the transformative part of your life. And to think to yourself that for one time in your life, you have 2 months to devote to you, 2 months to devote to whatever you want to be on the other side of this, and be accountable as to how you use that time. Right now, Americans are spending an average of 8 hours watching streamable TV, 8 hours watching The Tiger King and whatever else is on Netflix and all these other shows. And look, I love an escape just as much as somebody else, and there's a couple of TV shows that I watch. But at the end of the day, we're still going to be accountable for all of this time that we could have used for ourselves right now. And I challenge the group to look at what it could be on the other side of this, and then back into what that implies they need to do today.
Yeah, oh, that's so good, so good. I know that we've allowed our listeners to give questions and ask. So Ryan, if you want to jump on, and we'll do a little Q&A here, and people can give you some questions, Joel.
Love it.
Oh, and I see Ryan has a helper with him today.
Debbie, we got to keep the streak going. Joel hasn't had anybody crash the party yet. So
yeah, there you go. There you go.
I don't know if he's got his office locked or what he's got going, but so I got one that's actually been holding my notebook the entire time. So I said, you know what, she's just going to join us today and keep the streak alive, right?
Yes.
So first question, Brother Joel. First, thank you for joining us, man. What a time with you, man. It's been amazing. Just love the messages. Feedback's amazing in the chat, and doing great, man. If Joel were standing in front of his 20-year-old former self, what advice would he give?
So I'll take you back. I actually addressed the cadet wing at the Air Force Academy on this exact subject in February. And so one of the things that I regretted during that time as I was attending the academy is that I didn't take the opportunity seriously when I was there. I was living for the moment. And it's easy to do as kids. I mean, that's just what we do, I think, and you have to grow into some of the discipline that makes you more successful. But when all of a sudden you fast forward 13 years later and I was on my deathbed and I didn't have any time left, I certainly regretted that I just wasted my early 20s and had not had just more of the fun adventures, and not in a serious way, like I gotta go do these things. One of the things that I learned through my experience is that there's none of these things we have to do, but growth feels good, and growth is only on the other side of suffering and challenge, and so you got to get to growth through that challenge. And this is not something we have to do. This is important. This is something we get to do, and we have to make that distinction in our minds. It's not pressure. I didn't put pressure on myself to do this, but I wasted a lot of time in my early 20s because I didn't even have anything that I was really pursuing. Sounds strange for somebody that went out and became a fighter pilot afterwards, but wasn't super disciplined and didn't connect it to some real activity.
Awesome. Let's look at this. I know you and I were talking about this earlier, so it's a good fitting question. Joel, how has COVID-19 impacted you on work and family?
So it's interesting. It reminds me of when I was doing chemo, because paradoxically, when I was doing chemo, it was like the worst of times, staying up all night and staring at the ceiling and, wondering if I'd got my will done and just all these horrible, morbid questions going through my mind. And then also the best of times too, because I'm home with my family 24/7. I'm making these incredible memories. You're focusing on what's important because you have that moment of clarity. And I think it feels a lot the same way right now. So look, everybody's businesses are suffering. Everybody's businesses are challenged right now. And, unless you're selling toilet paper or hand sanitizer, this is going to be a challenging quarter for everybody. But this is also a transformative opportunity. I'm spending time at home I've never gotten in years. In a decade, I haven't been home this much. And then it's the opportunity for us to treat our business like a startup and to reimagine things. Very often we find ourselves in our lives or even our professional careers trying to just remove the sand from the gears, right? Make things a little more efficient. We're telling teams right now, it's not about removing the sand from the gears of the existing machine. I want you to reinvent the machine of your life, of your corporate team, of everything, your business completely. We have this rare opportunity to just reimagine the entire thing and put new gears in there. And so to answer your question succinctly, it's that paradox of really challenging times, but at the same time, really exciting and big opportunity as well.
Yeah, I think that is so good. And, as we went through having 2 months of, events canceled and over $150,000, that was lost from revenue that would have come from those. And yet our mission was still strong. I still had, veterans calling in who are struggling with post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury. They needed care and they needed it now. We've got some that the added stress of COVID has, put them almost over the edge. And so spending, more time with those. And yet, because so many things had drastically changed, my hours had been cut back extremely, and I was quite trying to figure out the aloneness, and knew that prayer was an important part of what I wanted to do. And so I want to try to get people together, pray every day, give them some encouraging words. And then Ryan, who's one of our volunteers, called and he said, have you thought about this? Would you want to be part of this? Can we do this? And it was so similar to what I was thinking anyway. And his excitement and just, was the kick in the rear that I needed for God to get me motivated. And we came up with this. I never had on my heart that I wanted to do a podcast, but because I'm always wanting to encourage others. And I thought, well, we're at home. I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. Can't speak to people anywhere else. So this is what happened with that creativity. And I think that's so important. You are spot on, Joel, that people need to do that. And when we get creative, it's exciting. It's fun. It brings something in new. Like you said, you're not taking the sand out of the cogs of the wheel the way they are. That's the same rut we tend to get in. And so this could be a really inspiring, encouraging time for people. And I know so many people are going to take that to heart as well.
So Joel, I've got a guest that's going to read the next question here for you.
Okay.
What do you think about the Top Gun movie coming out?
First of all, great job asking the question. The new Top Gun movie, I tell you, I love the first one. It was one of the reasons I became a fighter pilot. I mean, you can't be 10 years old and not think that was super cool and to call all your friends Iceman and Maverick after that. I think that was probably the extent to the magic, and it's going to be a fun movie for me to watch, but probably a little cheesier than we'd hope when we go see it. But we'll see. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully it's just a blockbuster.
Thank you so much, Joel. The time has been awesome with you today, and we'd like to give you the opportunity to take a minute and share something that you're involved in, a way that we could support you back. All of our guests have been so amazing to donate their time, and I know that's what you guys do professionally. You get paid to do that, so thank you so much. But we would like to support you. What projects are you involved in? Do you want to highlight your book? What things would you like to bring out that our listeners can support you?
Sure, I'd leave the guests with a couple of things. First thing, I told them on social that I would talk a little bit about transitioning out of the military and how this is a particularly challenging time to do that right now. I think we at the company that I'm CEO of, and I joined it, about halfway through its existence. It's been around for 24 years. And one of the unique things about this company is that we've always employed former fighter pilots, Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, elite military team members, and we've seen the power and the magic of what they can do with corporate initiatives and how they can unlock the potential of corporate teams, much like they were able to lead effectively in the complex, dynamic, high-stakes environment of the battlefield. And so for the team members that are listening right now that are in transition, getting ready to transition, 2 pieces of advice for you, because we help out transitioning military members to the tunes of thousands every single year. First thing is you are probably underestimating the extent to which you're going to have to reinvent yourself to enter the corporate world. Here's what I mean by that. I left the military as a leader, as somebody who was, flying $50 million machines and being given all these responsibilities and felt like I'd seen a lot of complex scenarios and be able to find my way through them. That was true, but I spoke the language of military, which is akin to saying I speak Spanish and the business world speaks Portuguese. They sound the same, but they're really not. And when you get into that business world and you expect all this stuff to immediately translate, it doesn't. You have to start from scratch, and that's humbling and that's hard to do. I was lieutenant colonel having to leave the military and do all of this and basically start at the bottom. But here's the good news. If you're able to do that and you're able to literally act as if you're starting over again and reinventing yourself in that position, you have this incredible potential to add so much more to the corporate team that you're joining because of your experiences. So as soon as you're able to translate into this new language what you learned in this other world, I'm telling you, you are going to be the most valuable resource to that team. You're going to shoot up through the corporate ranks so quickly. You're going to be the one who's leading in a really fun, exciting way, just like when you're leading the military, some can't-fail corporate initiatives. But it does take that reinvention period in order to pull that off. If you guys have more questions about that, I love mentoring transitioning vets. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can find us at afterburner.com. That's the website for the business that I'm CEO of. You can find my book, Survivor's Obligation, at Amazon. We're an Amazon bestseller this year. We are up for 2 Top Book of the Year awards in May as well. All of the proceeds from that are going to charities. My charity is for cancer. My co-author's charity is for veterans with PTS, post-traumatic stress. And so go pick that up. I think you'll find a lot out of that as well. We're trying to create a community of folks that are just like Mama Lee, living the obligation on the other side of a tragic scenario. And then that's it. Really excited to be here and to make this introduction. I truly believe this is probably the start of more interactions, Mama Lee, and really love what you're doing for folks.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, Joel. We are so blessed to have you here. So many of our veterans give so selflessly, even after they get out of the military, for the missions, just like you have, to continue to help our veterans transition. And it's so important as they're transitioning that they find their new mission, because that's when that downward spiral happens, when they get out and they don't know what they're going to do next and they don't get focused on something else. And so they've got to do that. So thank you so much for being willing to help our men and women as they transition as well. I think back, obviously this is a gift. Mark's last letter home talked about doing more random acts of kindness. So this is our random act of kindness back to you. Please feel free to share this. Obviously what we do at America's Mighty Warriors is for our military, for our veterans, for our troops, for our Gold Star families, but this is something that could benefit anybody. So if you want to share this with any of your family and friends, please feel free to do so. And then I think back to how Mark ends that letter. And he says, to my family and friends, do me a favor, pass on the kindness, the love, the precious gift of human life. And right now, in the midst of COVID-19, if we all had that attitude, even after COVID-19, we could change our world by having that kind of attitude. So thank you so much. God bless you guys. Come back tomorrow for On Me podcast number 5.
When fear flashes its teeth like a lion, when evil roars and walls begin to shake, there's a strength that's not my own. There's a fire in my bones. He is with me and his hand is ever on me. Follow on me. We're marching out into the night. Follow on me. We're standing up against a giant. Follow on me. We might be walking in the fire, But if it's where we're meant to be, then on me.